Hello, my name is Jaspreet Brar, and today I will be analyzing George Orwell's essay of Shooting an Elephant for my final summative assignment for this course. This is an essay based on Orwell's first-hand experience as a British officer during the time he served in colonial Burma. My goal is to explore this essay through literary lenses, literary themes, and literary devices and connected to the ideas that we have explored during the assignment of The Wars by Timothy Findlay and some other texts throughout this course. So, to briefly go over the story of shooting an elephant, here Orwell faces a moral dilemma. An elephant has caused damage in a village, and although the elephant has calmed down, the locals expect Orwell to kill the elephant for their peace of mind and security. Orwell doesn't want to kill the elephant. He knows that the elephant has calmed down, so it will be unnecessary to create any more violence. But he feels pressurized by the crowd watching him, since he represents the power of the empire in front of those people. He's forced to ultimately kill the elephant, not out of necessity, but to avoid humiliation for the crown. This act becomes a metaphor for the damaging effects of imperialism on both the colonizers and the colonized, and the colonized by fearing the wrath of the oppressors for any kind of misbehavior or failure to conform, and for colonizers by carrying the guilt of violence. We will be looking at this essay from the lenses of post-colonialism and psychology. From a post-colonial perspective, this essay criticizes the British Empire's oppressive system. Orwell shows that imperialism traps everyone, it strips freedom from the people who are being ruled, and forces the rulers to maintain an image of dominance out of the insecurity of being overthrown. As he writes, I was only an absurd puppet pushed to and fro by the will of those yellow faces behind. This line showcases how little control he has of the situation that he is in. Now, looking at the essay from a psychological lens, we see that Orwell's internal conflict, his ego wants to act morally, but his superego follows the societal expectations. The elephant itself becomes a symbol of his conscience, large, powerful, and ultimately destroyed. Now we will discuss the themes of imperialism as a corrupt force, the loss of agency, and the moral ambiguity throughout this essay. Orwell's actions show that imperialism harms both sides. It forces moral compromises. Orwell has to act in a way that protects the image of the imperial power, even if it goes against his personal beliefs. Loss of agency. Even with a gun, Orwell isn't truly in control. The crowd dictates his actions and influences how he should feel. Although the crowd is not going to take accountability for Orwell's actions, but still pressuring him to act in a way that he would feel regret shows how little control this Orwell has in this whole ordeal. Moral ambiguity. There's no completely right or wrong choice here, just like in the wars, when Robert Ross faces impossible moral decisions in the war. Orwell is stuck between the beliefs of letting the animal live, but feels the societal pressure to kill the elephant. Now, looking at the literary devices used throughout the essay, symbolism. The elephant represents the British Empire as huge and powerful, but struggling to handle the weight of its own actions, causing damage and disruption through society and cultures, acting violently against an unwelcoming host to gain more power and control. Irony. Orwell has an authority of an officer, yet he's powerless to act freely. Having power and authority but to protect an image shows how empty that kind of power is when he's not able to act according to his own beliefs. Imagery. Orwell's vivid description of Elephant's slow death shows readers the suffering and the emotion that moment carries. He looked suddenly stricken, shrunken, and immensely old. Makes the reader feel the weight of the act. Now we will talk about the connections of Shooting an Elephant with The Wars by Timothy Findlay. In The Wars, Robert Ross is pressured by Army's expectations. In Shooting an Elephant, Orwell is pressured by the Empire and the crowd. Both act against their personal values, showing how institutions can strip away morality, which makes people carry emotional traumas with them, and conform beliefs of people, which ultimately changes how they think, since actions dictate how a person evolves over time mentally. Animals in both works, horses in the wars, the elephant in Orwell's essay, symbolizes innocence, suffering, and heavy burden placed on an individual after killing the animal. So, to sum it all up, Shooting an Elephant isn't just a story about an animal being killed by the hands of George Orwell. It really is about the complicated way the power works within our society. Orwell might have had a gun in his hand, but the real control belonged to the people watching him, and those are the people who dictated his actions as they had influence over his actions. This essay shows us how authority can be a cage sometimes, forcing people to act in a way that goes against their own values, just to keep up the appearances of power and control. It's a reminder that sometimes the toughest battles aren't out in the open, but they're inside a person's mind, where fear, pride, expectations can push us to make choices that we would regret later on in our lives and have significant impact on how we think. There are a lot of similarities in Shooting an Elephant and The Wars by Timothy Findlay, where Robert Ross faces impossible choices in the world that has turned upside down due to World War One. So, Shooting an Elephant connects to the bigger themes that we have been exploring: identity, morality, power, and effects of one's actions. So, thank you very much for listening. And if you have any feedback over my segment, please let me know. Thank you very much.